All right. So Hayden is, hold on. Let me, all right. All right, Hayden. So I have Hayden. She is a former client of mine, and we're just gonna chat a bit about her story and I ask her maybe a few questions around her recovery, and we will go from there. So Hayden, thanks for taking the time to chat today with me and be able to share your message with so many women across the world that are struggling with period recovery. Um, so I want to ask you, Hayden, what is your background, with period, recovery, and just share a bit about your story.
Oh, okay. So I have a very long history, so I will try to briefly condense it and then bring us to the most relevant slash pertinent points, which is the last 4 years of my life. But I've been in recovery from an eating disorder for the past 18 years. So to put that into perspective, I'm 28 now, so I've been at this since I was 10 years old. And like all people in eating disorder recovery, it kind of varies throughout your life, and you have periods where you struggle more and struggle less. And I would say probably I was at the best place with my recovery when I was towards the end of college. And I really started to kind of shift my mindset around like food and exercise, and was really looking more at food as being fuel versus um, a means to an end in terms of changing my body. But unfortunately, when I graduated college, I transitioned into doing competitive Olympic weightlifting, which is a weight class based sport, which should have been a red flag for me from the beginning that it probably wasn't the best thing for me to do. But I thought I was in a pretty healthy place with my recovery, and I thought that I could handle it. And unfortunately, it kind of went down was kind of the point of no return. I shortly after started doing weightlifting, lost my period, and that was around 2016. And then it wasn't until actively working towards period recovery. I like to share this story because it was a really pivotal moment in my life. It was a Saturday morning, and I was getting ready to go to the gym. And after I got to the gym, and when I got there, they closed the gym that day for a CrossFit level 1 cert, because that was the gym that I trained out of. They were a CrossFit gym. And I couldn't use the gym. And it put an entire wedge in my day. And there was nothing I could do to really kind of figure out like where I could find a new gym or where I could train at. And in the past, if I wasn't in medical school, I would have probably gone and trained somewhere else. But frankly, I didn't have that time in my schedule anymore because I was a medical student and that was my priority. And the fact that that really kind of derailed my day made me realize that this was a problem I really needed to address and focus on. And I started going to a doctor. I started going to see a therapist. And I don't really think if it wasn't for the pandemic, honestly, and the fact that, being in isolation, and you can look up all kinds of stuff about the implications of COVID on mental health and particularly eating disorders. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But if it really wasn't for those factors, I don't think I really would have recovered my period in 2020, but I just couldn't bear it anymore and I couldn't do it on my own. And that's when I really sought out help. And that's when I started seeing therapists. And then shortly after, I met Cynthia and we started working together because I felt like I really needed some support with the nutrition aspect. Even though I do have quite extensive knowledge from working with dietitians in the past and also my educational background. Um, but sometimes you need that extra support. So after working with Cynthia for a couple months, I got my period in October of 2020, and I've had my period since then. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Cynthia, I can't hear you.
hear you. Oh, wait, you're back.
Yeah, now I hear you.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone, because I went to switch to my ear pods and I guess that didn't work. Anyway, so, Hayden, thank you for sharing that story. And I know you probably condensed it from 100% maybe to down to 25%. There's a lot involved in eating disorder recovery, and then in period recovery. And I know you shared that pivotal moment for you was you went to the gym and you're ready to get your workout in and it was closed, and that just threw your whole day off, right?
Yeah, it was a point of just like, at that point I realized I wasn't in control of my relationship with food and exercise as well as I thought I did, because I was so upset by it, and it was kind of like, my whole day was ruined. And
Yeah.
it was like I didn't have time to go to the gym because I needed to study. And even in my mind, it was like, it's just one day. And I had to like talk myself down a cliff. And luckily I have like a lot of tools to be able to do that. But if you're not someone who's well versed in therapy language and self-care, that's not something to easily, come down from, I think, if you're in that kind of mindset.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And Hayden, when you thought, okay, the gym is closed and this has ruined my whole day. Now, did you think, okay, now I can't eat X, Y, and Z? Did that impact your eating at all when you missed the gym?
I never really. So it's interesting because in my mind, I had some very much diet culture-y behaviors. I weighed and measured all my food. I counted my calories. I counted macros. I did all of that because for the sake of performance. But I wouldn't say that like I was really the kind of person to compensate if um I didn't work out that day. I generally ate the same amount every
Okay.
single day. But I would say that probably it might change some of my food choices a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Probably not, maybe not eat as much carbs or all those things that, social media and diet culture like tell you, like, on days that you're less active, you shouldn't eat as many carbs. You should eat more fat or eat more vegetables or do this and that. And
Or eat less in general, right?
yeah.
That's a huge one. And for anyone listening right now, that is missing their period, that you do not have to, and regardless if you're not missing your period, you do not have to earn your food, right? Just because you didn't go to the gym that day doesn't mean anything. All it means is you didn't go to the gym that day. But it's easier said than done when we're knee deep in, exercising, all the time and restrictive behaviors. So that was your breaking point where you're like, you know what, enough is enough. I need help. Like I need, I've made it this far. And for so many women out there, they have gone through eating disorder recovery. And now here they are at this point of like, I've done all this work from recovering from my eating disorder, but I still got these little bits and pieces left of it. And so for you, those bits and pieces, what were they? That you feel like were holding you back from getting your period.
I was in a very, I think it took me, I had a really hard time accepting that I was in a place where I was struggling, and I knew that I was, but I felt a lot of shame because I had been in a place where my eating disorder had really controlled my life, and I was in a really, I almost died. So I think that for me it was hard to kind of accept that, I was struggling again. And then once that I got past that point where it was like, it's like recovery is not linear, then I really was able to kind of address those behaviors that weren't, no, quote unquote normal. So things like weighing and measuring my food every day, and, you know, accounting for like sauces that I was putting on food that really had negligible calories to begin with, but 1 gram of carbs really matters in the grand scheme of things, or like never missing a workout, having to just not really having flexibility around food or exercise, or in situations where I didn't have control over food, it was a stress inducing kind of environment. It was kind of like I had to do everything that I could in my power to control like what I was consuming at all times. And every move, every moment was calculated out. I mean, I told you it was kind of like I was a robot. And that's more or less how I lived my life for the past 4 years leading up to medical school. And then when my first year of medical school, because, I had to study. I wanted to be a doctor, but I couldn't miss a workout. So, having to get up at 5:30 in the morning to work out was the only option. So those
Yeah,
were just,
tired or not, right? If you
yeah,
were
tired or not, headache or not, because I get migraines. I would still make myself go to the gym if I had a headache, or, if I only slept 5 or 6 hours, still go to the gym. So it was that militant sort of discipline that I couldn't break from. And I think that's what I really needed help with, was having someone tell me that it was okay to, I think consistency is important. And I think, I'm not saying that exercise is definitely important for your overall health and longevity, but what I was doing was not sustainable for longevity or healthy. And so I think I really needed someone to tell, a professional to tell me that, it is okay to not live your life in that kind of way, and to live a more balanced and moderate life. And that is healthy, because you have so many messages from outside telling you that, you have to go to the gym 6, 7 days a week, no rest days, 2 a days, like all this type of ridiculous stuff that, unfortunately, the way that social media algorithms work, you're constantly fed, and you start to believe that that's real life. Or you follow athletes on social media and you think that you have to live your life that way. And that's not normal.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that piece. And really, the context of the word healthy is, would you say, used out of, I mean, it's not appropriately used, right? Because here we are, right? Or here we were.
Yeah, it's not appropriately used. And I think it's really hard because, as a medical student, something that we're obviously taught that, like obesity is a problem, not exercising is a problem, not eating well is a problem, but we're not really given much training. And then also in the context of that, we're being taught that all these things contribute to comorbidities and other health problems. So you hear that from one angle, and then you hear the other, like diet culture angle. And then it's just kind of like this overwhelming sort of, it's hard to decipher like what really is truth, and like what is really, they're almost kind of feeding into each other in a way.
Yeah. And it scares us, right? I know at one point it scared me,
Yeah.
as I struggled with some disordered eating. I was so scared. I must exercise every day. I must eat healthy. And that, being scared into that, you know, got us where we were with no period. And it's important to know that when we think healthy, right, I mean, to you now, healthy, Hayden, is having this flexibility with working out, this flexibility with eating, and you're no longer a robot, right?
To some extent.
Well, of course, you are a medical student studying to be a doctor, so that takes some damn hard work. And I might want to add, I know Hayden told me while she was working with me, can't remember what month you told me this, but you shared how studying has changed and your retention of information has changed. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, like if you look at my grade, I think I would like to think that like my grades from last year to this year is not primarily entirely due to the fact that I finally learned how to study, because that in and of itself is a hump when you enter medical school, is learning how to study. But I'd like to think it's because I have a lot more energy in my life to focus on learning and mastering material, as well as it just opened my life to a lot of other opportunities too, in terms of developing career. So I think those are just two of the positives of just kind of letting go of that part of my life, which I knew that I needed to do. And it's just kind of, I'm going to reiterate it again. It just goes along the lines of saying, like, sometimes you just need someone to tell you that it's okay to let go of those things. You don't need to have such a death grip on all aspects of your life. Like if you actively work towards every single thing, it'll eventually all culminate into what you want.
Yeah.
So,
And I think it's important to note too, even before you're to the point of asking for help, is just being honest with yourself, telling yourself that you do need some support and some help, right? And that could be such a hard part for so many of us, because like you said, if women that are listening to this, have gone through eating disorder recovery before, they may say the same thing, like, well, I'm nowhere near as bad as I used to be, and therefore I may not have a problem anymore. Or you may be on the flip side of never undergoing an eating disorder treatment or recovery before, and you're the average healthy woman that is just exercising every single day, and is very regimented with her eating and that stuff, and which is so normalized, right? So going back to that, you may not know that this is even a problem, or maybe you do but you don't want to accept it yet. So I think being honest with yourself, like it sounds exactly what you did, was I was honest with myself. I said, you know what, I've made it this far, I do see I still have a bit of a struggle left, I'm going to seek help for this, of a professional, someone that could help me change these behaviors. And like you said, tell me it's okay. Like sometimes at the end of the day, all we need someone to do is tell us, like, yeah, it's okay to do that, or do this or do that. um but thank you for sharing that, Hayden, and the flexibility in your life now. I know you said that now you have more time and energy to devote to school, which you've already seen an improvement in your grades. But thinking of how amazing you are treating your body now, to, like, if you were to plan a workout, say tomorrow, say you're getting up to go to the gym tomorrow and plan X, Y, and Z. Now, if you woke up feeling super tired because you had a long night studying, what would you do now?
I probably would just end up going for a walk that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just adjust.
Yeah.
Like if I planned to go to the gym, I would have just adjusted and gone the next day. And I mean, for myself personally, I try to do something, even if I don't go to the gym, I try to at least go for a walk. Because personally, sitting on your butt all day in front of the computer is not probably, you need a brain break, probably not the best for your body. So at least I try to do something like that if I don't.
Yeah. And now it's coming from the right place versus like, oh my gosh, I haven't moved today and I'm super stressed, or I plan this and I have to do it because I put it in my planner. And so that flexibility piece of working out, and then the flexibility of now with your food. So if you could just share one example of how, I guess, unflexible you were before, and now how much more flexible you are, because working on these behaviors of saying, all foods fit and all foods are good foods. Would you be able to share an example that comes to mind?
Yeah, and it was one that was recently that I shared with you. I was looking for an apartment to live because I'm moving, and we were in an unfamiliar city, and I was with my mom, and we wanted to get lunch, and so we walked around to like find a place to eat, and we just picked a restaurant. I didn't look at the menu. I honestly didn't even, in the past, I would have researched like all the restaurants that we were looking at in the area, would have looked at the menus, would have found something that would have fit like whatever I wanted to eat that day or was planning to fit into my routine or schedule. And, I just said, you know what, we'll just find something. And then we went to a restaurant and we picked it because it looked like it would be food that we'd want to eat. And we sat down and my mom was looking at the menu and she said to me, she's like, Hayden, are you sure you want to eat here? It doesn't look like there's anything that you would eat. And I said to her, I was like, nah, it's fine. I'll find something. And like, I think for me, just having that flexibility to, just say like, it's one meal, I can find something. It's not that big a deal. Like if I want to eat something off my mom's plate, I can do that. Like, I think for me, and being able to just like kind of detach myself a little bit emotionally from the aspect of the food. Like, yeah, food is supposed to be like a social thing and it's supposed to connect you with other people, but it's just one meal. It's not going to make or break your entire life. It's not going to make or break your health. Like it's not going to send you down this spiral of out of control. And I think that for me, it was I think it was a testament to how far I've come.
Yeah.
And I definitely it's interesting because as I look back when I was really struggling towards now, I definitely had moments where if I was in a situation where I was forced to, I would adapt in that kind of way. But I think being able to voluntarily do it is another thing. Like, I remember the very first day, or maybe the second day of medical school, we had orientation and they gave us lunch. And the lunch that day, and I didn't bring a lunch. And the lunch, because they were going to give us lunch. And I was like, you know what, I'll figure it out. And the lunch that they gave us was pasta. And I was like, I haven't had pasta. I don't voluntarily eat pasta. It definitely threw me for a loop. And I was like, well, you know what? I just got to make the best of it. And I'm just going to eat this pasta and try to eat the chicken that's in the pasta. And, I lived with that decision and I had to tell myself, it's just one meal. It's not that big of a deal. But that's kind of what I mean. Like I was forced into a situation where, there was nothing else to eat. I didn't have any food. I'm not going to not eat something, but I think that to go from that to voluntarily saying like, I can find something. It's really not that big a deal and not being stressed about it, I think is another thing.
Yeah, that's huge. And Hayden, what do you think helped you with that mindset shift of like, yeah, this is fine. It's just another day, another meal, that it wasn't a big deal. What do you think helped you with that?
I think a lot of it honestly comes down to practice. I think that, and this is actually like something they do, I think, in eating disorder recovery. It's like exposure therapy. And I think the more times you either think about a certain situation, I think you can actually, it's either there are exercises where you can sit down and think about a situation that you might expose yourself to, or you can actually go and actually do it, or go kind of like halfway and not necessarily, or might be in the actual place where you might do something like that, but not actually go through with the act and just kind of deal with the emotions. And I think it was just small changes that kind of incrementally let me be okay with those kinds of situations. It was, first it was like, for example, I have Sunday dinner with some family friends of mine, and I usually contribute to the dinner, and they usually make something. And I think it started out with me like not asking what they were going to make for dinner and like bringing something. And I think after that, it got me okay with going like, okay, like, I can go to a restaurant and do something like that. So I think it's just like little small incremental steps where like, yes, I had some control because I was bringing something to that family dinner, but now I'm in a situation where I have no control over what they're providing. So it's kind of like those small little incremental changes that lead up to being okay and comfortable in that kind of situation.
Yeah, and that's an awesome point you bring up, Hayden, because a lot of times when I worked with you or I work with other women, that we try to focus on these smaller changes to build us up, to give us the confidence to do these maybe bigger things, or more I guess lifelong things that we're going to keep up and that are going to occur on a regular basis, like going out to eat, or at least ordering takeout in COVID times. So I think that's important, to share with everyone that, even these small little changes that you may think are really small, they're really actually quite big. And they lead us to bigger and greater and more permanent things sticking in our lives. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think that also it's kind of, I think a lot of it is natural too, at least for me. Like I even see it now that I've had multiple periods, and I'm still working on a lot of the things and a lot of the tools that I've, you know, developed. But I just find myself slowly letting go of little things here and there. And that comes with just like repeatedly doing small little changes and small and kind of taking the opportunities that you're comfortable with doing versus like kind of throwing yourself into a situation or throwing the baby out with the bathwater and making all these changes.
Yeah. And, most of us with, missing periods or HA, we tend to be these type A perfectionists. And when we don't, if we set a goal and sometimes we don't accomplish it, maybe, because we like to be overachievers too, right? That kind of puts sometimes a little bit of a setback on us. And so, trying not to bite off more than we can chew and doing something that you feel somewhat comfortable with, but yet still maybe a tiny bit uncomfortable with, and building from there. Um, which is great to share because, as all of us tend to be perfectionists and type A, we want this change to happen at once, and we don't want to feel these uncomfortable feelings. And some advice, and we'll wrap up in a bit, but advice to other women out there, Hayden, that are struggling with, like, I just want to be done with this, like I just want to do it all at once, and what advice would you have to them as far as feeling that bit of uncomfortableness, and making these long lasting changes versus, all right, I just need to eat a ton of food and rest and like be done with it?
Um, I think the biggest thing that really helped me was seeing a therapist and
Mhm.
also journaling. If you have no idea where to start with a therapist, honestly, like there's so many resources now. BetterHelp is an app that can connect you with a therapist. You can probably find somebody who is in the realm of like issues with food, whether it be disordered eating or eating disorders. Um, so a therapist, and then I think journaling really helped me a lot throughout this process. So if I ever felt like something was really making me anxious around food, or I was feeling anxious around something that I did involving food, I think journaling about it and kind of reassuring myself and talking out those feelings, or at least writing out those feelings, was something that was encouraging, to have me keep going. And I think for myself personally, like I know that there are some women who kind of want to just, do everything, get it over with, get their periods, and um, move on with their life. And I understand that sentiment. But I think for me personally, I had to my best like this is kind of backtracking, but really I kind of had to play my own game. I had to focus on myself, because I think focusing on what other people do just makes me more anxious about the situation and makes me second guess and question what I'm doing. And so I think for me the best thing was really just kind of remove any sort of like, seek out people who could actually help me, and then work on myself and only focus on what I was doing and do the things that I was comfortable with doing and making those small incremental changes, because that's what to me was sustainable. And I feel like for me personally, just kind of going like throwing everything at the wall and expecting, something to stick, it's kind of like, well, how do you know what it was that helped you get there? And what makes you think like, at least now, I think that now I actually have tools that if something like this were to happen again, which hopefully it doesn't, I would know what to do because I've been here before.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that's what it was a little different, because I had lost my period before when when I first had my eating disorder when I was a kid. I had lost my period for a year and a half, but I never exercised. So I didn't know how to find that balance with the exercise component. And so for me, I had to slowly decrease. And that's what helped me kind of figure out what my sweet spot was with like how much I'm fueling, how much stress I can really put on my body, and what can help me be hormonally healthy. Um, I know that's kind of a long-winded answer with little bunny trails, but
Hey,
just
there's no straightforward answer
yeah,
to advice
to
because
summarize, I would just say like find somebody, like really find a therapist. It's worth the investment because you're investing in your health, you're investing in your long-term health. Do it. If you really feel like you need help with the food component, find a dietitian like Cynthia. Also interview people. Just because you find one person doesn't mean they're a good fit for you. You really need to interview a couple people and see like if they're going to be able to work with you, if your personalities fit, because that's also something too. Like you could find somebody who specializes in eating disorders or disordered eating, but their style of therapy just doesn't work with you. It just doesn't work with your personality. And so you're not going to be successful with that person. So find somebody that works for you. Find people that are willing to help you and invest in your health because it's worth it. And then the third thing I would say is journal. That really helped me throughout this entire process, especially dealing with it in isolation. Um, and also, and then the fourth thing I would say is just make small changes, a little bit at a time.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Hayden. And, for those out there that are listening, Hayden and I worked one-on-one for a while. And then Hayden entered into group coaching with myself and a few other women. And, Hayden has definitely made, in my eyes, a full circle recovery with her missing period and with her relationship with food and exercise, and it did take some time, and the thing is we want to make these small changes over time because not only do they stick, but they are going to help you really repair the underlying reason why you lost your period in the first place. Because I'll tell you what, we don't want to do all this work and then end up with a missing period again. So, I try to structure, all my programs, when I work with women to make sure we are doing small changes because they are sustainable. They help build confidence, right? Hayden had small changes and then it was like, okay, well, I did those, I could do these kind of thing. So, and helps, I'd like to say, let's get your period back. Let's not ever lose it until, if you happen to want to conceive children one day or you become menopausal. Other than that, I don't want your period to ever be lost again. So, and I truly believe that Hayden has all the tools in her tool belt to, get through this. And guess what? If she hits a barrier, Hayden, you've been here before, you've asked for help, and I'm sure you would do the same thing.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. So next steps for you, what are your future plans? So your post-period recovery, great relationship with food. And I know you might say, well, it's not great, but that's just our overachieving minds. I would say from where Hayden was till she is now, yeah, it's pretty great. So don't let her tell you otherwise. But what's your future plans?
Um, well, right now I am studying for my first board exam. So I was telling Cynthia before we started this recording that I hope my bags didn't permeate through the camera too much because I'm very tired. But yeah, I take my first board exam at the beginning of April, and then I have a little bit of time off, and then I go right into rotations and clinicals, and I'll be a third year medical student, which is crazy, but I'm very excited to start working in a hospital and start actually working with patients and yeah, see where my career goes and what I actually end up doing in medicine, which is crazy because a year from now I will know kind of where I want to go. So
yeah, it's very exciting, and I wish you the best of luck with everything, Hayden. And I really thank you for your time today and sharing, your story with other women that are battling not so fun battle, but hey, at the end of the day, would you say it's worth it?
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. It's hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, because you constantly feel like, at least especially now, like you feel like you're living in your feelings all the time, and sometimes it's really hard. And you have good days and you have bad days, and you just have to ride the wave. And eventually, the only way out is through,
Mm,
and then you'll make it to where you want to be.
yes. Yes. Well, thank you again, Hayden. And again, best of luck. And I'm very excited that we will have a health at every size practitioner, whatever Hayden ends up doing. And if you're not familiar with the health at every size approach, Google it and learn more. And there's also a book on it too. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Hayden.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say that I really appreciated us having this conversation because I really wanted to advocate for this population of women who struggle with HA. And also because, I think just because I'm a medical student and I might have knowledge that, like, just because of that, like, doesn't mean that I'm not, you know, impermeable to, diet culture. It just goes to show that it affects everyone, no matter what your gender is, no matter your body size. Um, and so I think that's why it's important to really have these kinds of conversations and raise awareness. So thank you, Cynthia, for talking to me and letting me share my story and experience.
Yes. Thank you so much, Hayden.